Hi everyone, my name is Allison Parch, and today I will be teaching you about our author Edward W. Said and the book Representations of the Intellectual, and we'll be focusing on chapter 1, which is the same title as the book. So to start off with our author, Edward Said, he was born November 1st, 1935, and died September 24th, 2003. He was born in Palestine, and so while he was there living there in the Middle East, the government took away their land, he talks about, and when he did that, he felt like it was their right to have their land, and he felt like they should have their rights back, and he saw it as like a big issue and did things to try and fix that issue. So that was what he did in the Middle East for a part of his life. And then after all that, he moved to the United States and attended Princeton and Harvard University. And then after he graduated from there, he was a professor. He became a professor of English and comparative literature at Columbia University. He wrote 37 books. One of them on the top is our book, and then the picture that I put on the bottom, Orientalism, that's one of his most famous books that he ever wrote, and it's basically just about his theory of Orientalism. He was also the founder of the academic field of post-colonial studies, and he happens to refer to himself as a public intellectual, which I found was interesting, but true, but after I learned more about him, but I thought it was interesting because the whole book he's trying to define what it is to be an intellectual or an intellect, and he refers to himself as one. And then, so now we're going to talk about chapter 1, representations of the intellectual, and basically what we're talking about is what it means to be an intellect. And so he talks about like two main people who are very credible and their definition of what it means to be an intellect. And the first one, Gramsci, his definition is that there's we read this, but that there's two types, right? One is the traditional type of intellect, and the second is the organic. The traditional is like priests, teachers, those types of people, and they're very traditional. They do the same thing generation after generation, as like that type of leader. But the organic tries to kind of take that information that they learn and kind of like overpower or over control the traditional group. And this definition out of the two that he mentioned was definitely more of like a normal definition, I guess you would say, or not like so crazy one of what it is to be an intellect. And personally, in my opinion, I don't think that this definition is like 100% accurate to me, at least, because I feel like, yeah, the organic group like does that sometimes where they try and like overpower teachers and priests, or over like control them, but I feel like not every intellect has to do that. There can be like normal ones too, but it definitely does happen, but I just think it's more rare, and I don't know if it always has to fall in those two groups. And I think Said definitely, he doesn't agree with Gramsci completely, but he definitely agrees with him more than the next person we're going to talk about, and that was Julian Benda. And he believed that people that are intellects is only like a tiny percentage of people ever created. Like he gave the example of people that are intellects to be like Jesus and Socrates, and I think that this was kind of crazy to say because Jesus and Socrates are like literally, the tiniest percentage of people. Like, you have to be obviously crazy, famous, not just famous, but like popular, just to be an intellect. Like, there's definitely more than just this really small percentage, everybody who's ever been on this earth. So, and Saeed definitely agrees with that. He thinks that this percentage is way too small of people, and that there's a lot more people that are intellects than just these few people ever. So yeah, definitely the Gramsci was more of a reasonable definition than the Benda one. But one part that I wanted to talk about this chapter, they mentioned it a little bit, but I thought it was very important, was the idea of passion. And I have these pictures up. It'll make sense because basically, to be an intellect, it always has to start with a passion. Like, if you want to change the world, if you want to do anything in this world, you have to have a passion about something first, and then move from that. Like the examples up here that I gave is like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Martin Luther King Jr., like either like morally in the world, like Martin Luther King Jr. trying to make a change that way to make things better for humans, or like Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, Elon Musk, people like that, trying to make the world better, like in advances of technology, things like that. Obviously, they did huge things in this world both ways, but both of them started with all of them started with a passion for computers, software, making the world right, equal, things like that. So it just, it all just starts with like what they were passionate about, and then they did something about it, and it changed the world, everybody. So I think that was really important. And then like it kind of ties in with the last example, the Benda one, because I guess the examples that he used, not really, but the Jesus and Socrates, like Jesus is a little more complicated, but he definitely had a passion while he was here on this earth. And then Socrates, like, his passion was like, he had all this knowledge and like theories and questions about the world that we didn't know about at the time, and he had that passion in his head, and he took it to have, conversations with people, trying to question people, and he tried to like make his theories real questions for everyone to think about, because he was just ahead of his time. And so he just took like his passion and knowledge and tried to make something bigger about it, even though they didn't like how much he was thinking, and he ended up dying because of that. But at least he was passionate. He died for his passion, which is kind of funny. Not funny, but anyways. And then another part that kind of goes along with this is communication. And I think all of us are communication majors, so we realize how important it is to be able to, have good communication skills and be able to communicate like what you believe in or what you think. And I think this is really important to be an intellect, because you might have like this knowledge and like thoughts and plan in your head, but are you able to communicate it to others around you and the world around you? Because if you can't, then you're not really doing anything with that knowledge and passion and ideas. It's just kind of in your head. So I think communication is so important for this, to fulfill your role as an intellect. And you have to be able to communicate with the world, or else you're not making any changes around you. And then going off of communication as well, kind of, is what Saeed like talked about his like definition of being an intellect, and he basically said that like you have to have a calling to get something done like in this world. So you have to, it starts with your passion, your thoughts, whatever, your knowledge, and then you take that, he said like you make a plan about what you want to do about and it also starts with an issue and a problem. You have to have an issue, a problem, something about the world or whatever it is. You have to have that problem. You have to be passionate about that problem, and then you have to take that, turn it into a plan about what you're going to do about it to try and change it, and then you have to communicate it to the world and try and do something about it. Put your mind into the actions and put action into the world, and you can't stop until you're fulfilled with what your plan was and what you did for that plan and the problem that you had, and you can't stop unless it's done. And that's what intellects do. They won't stop working or trying to get their word out there until it's done. Kind of like Socrates again. Like, he literally didn't stop with the words he had and his thoughts and passion and all that. He didn't stop until he literally couldn't anymore, until they killed him for having those thoughts and questions about the world. So that's what Said said. He said you have to, share what you have with the world and communicate it to the world in order to get anything done. They're go-getters. They get stuff done. And that's exactly what he did in the Middle East when the government took away their land. And an example of this in more modern times would be Greta Thunberg. So, she had the issue with global warming. She was like, this is a big issue. And she, thought of a plan and made action to that plan. She used her communication skills and, she's making big, big changes in the world because of the issue she had. She was like, global warming's a huge issue, and now she's making big changes in the world, and she's not even done yet. Like, she won't stop until things start to really change for the better, and that's exactly what an intellect is. She's putting her actions into the world and getting stuff done, which is really good. And then to end everything off, I had a few questions for discussion for, when you're reading the rest of the book or discussing it in the discussion board. In your opinion, what does it mean to be an intellect? Or what's your own definition of one? And then, do you consider yourself to be one? And then lastly, which example that Said used did you most agree with for their own definition of being an intellect? Or which one did you find most interesting, or what? Or do you have a completely separate opinion from everybody that he mentioned, and do you have your own definition of what it is to be an intellect? So thanks for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it.